Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd today talking about Doctor Who, Space Babies, and the Devil's Chord. Now, I was just a kid during the 60s, but I do remember the first time that the Beatles were on American television, and it created a revolution, really, in the culture of this country, where we were experimenting with folk music and Elvis and Chuck Berry and things like that. And when the Beatles came in, it changed everything. And I'm not certain that it didn't change everything everywhere, but it certainly did here. And it caused a great interest in everything British. And so during that same era, we had British fashion, a certain amount of British culture. There was more interest in the Queen and the royal family during this time. And also there was, of course, movies and TV. Now, in the case of movies and TV, we found that, and this was before Monty Python, before Benny Hill came to this country, we found British humor to be much more zany and a little bit more... Well, all humor is culturally oriented. My mother used to say British humor when she didn't understand a joke. And this is the kind of thing that fits into these two episodes of Doctor Who, whereas they tend to go a little off the rails, if I may say, in the way that they're presented. Doctor Who in the last, ever since they rebooted the series back with Christopher Eccleston, it became less of a complete fantasy and had more anchors of things that you could believe. Eccleston himself looked more like a time traveler might look to my idea, rather than being dressed in a brightly colored coat and a long scarf and things like this, which I enjoyed. But still, the idea that he could blend in current society was an interesting change, and the fact that he was much more a real person was interesting. And in this series with Ncuti Gatwa, he, of course, seems very real to me, but at the same time, there are things that are going on that are a little bit different than what we have experienced through Doctor Who in the last decade or so. And so what we have here is a lot of fun in Space Babies. I don't know that when it all comes down to it, there was anything that was really as suspenseful or scary about it all, although the Doctor for the first time was scared himself, something that was unusual, and the way that they resolved that was rather interesting. But some of the things that we associate with more British humor, like body noises and body fluids, are something that you rarely see in a television show here, and hadn't been seeing in Doctor Who in quite some time either. And this was kind of interesting to see this in Space Babies. Otherwise, the special effects were rather interesting on this. We know that all of the babies were CG, but they were all believable enough. And I think that it worked as far as it did. I liked the use of the actor that played Queen Charlotte in Bridgerton, did a very good part there, and it all came together very well. I thought that it was a good first solid adventure, that and a nice little step back also with Ray Bradbury's butterfly effect. We've all heard the butterfly effect, and it came from The Sound of Thunder, which was a book written by Ray Bradbury, in which it was a future time when people could go back in time, but they had special places to walk, special walkways that were constructed to where they would not interfere with anything in ancient history, until one person fell off the walk and stepped on a butterfly, and the entire society changed when they got back. And so with this, Ruby asked about what it is that, is it, they're going back to prehistoric times, and Ruby asked, is there going to be any problem if I step on a butterfly? And the first time that I've ever thought about it. And it was a wonderful thing that they mentioned. The doctor says, "Who goes around stepping on butterflies? Come here, butterfly, I want to step on you." And that's true. We have a lot of butterflies where we live. My wife likes to raise a kind of plants that attract butterflies, and they rarely go on the ground. Your chances of stepping on a butterfly are infinitesimally slight. And I've never thought of it that way before, and it's interesting that the show brought it up that way. Nobody steps on butterflies. And so, of course, they say all of that, and then, of course, she steps on a butterfly, and it's a funny little bit. Not really, it really doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the show, but there is something to be said about how time changes. And we've always had, 3 or 4 different kinds of time travel tropes in which you go back in time and you change history, but it was the way it was supposed to have always been, or you go back in time and change history and it makes a parallel universe, or you go back in time and change history and it actually changes everything. And the third way is how the doctor explains. No, we're not going into a parallel universe. This is what happened because of something that we've done. And so it's interesting. They show that there is a butterfly exclusion circuit on the TARDIS to try to prevent these kind of things from happening. But that's kind of a funny little bit that they did. And so we're kind of morphing into the Devil's Chord. So let's talk about that. It opens up with a piano teacher and his student that are learning chords. And he mentions that there is a chord called the Devil's Chord and explains what it means and how it got that name. It was kind of interesting. And as they play it, out of the piano pops the new villain, played by Jinx Monsoon, called the Maestro. And the Maestro proceeds to deal with the music teacher and the student, and proceeds to play the piano. And what she's playing, of course, is the opening theme to Doctor Who, which then morphs into full orchestration as they run the intro. But very interesting that I don't think they've ever done anything like that before, and that was very effective. Otherwise, in the show, Jinx is literally chewing the scenery and playing it to the hilt. Of course, Jinx has the acting chops. She's a drag queen who has been on Broadway fairly recently, in the last few years, playing Mama Morton in the Chicago musical, and will soon be working in Little Shop of Horrors. And she and her collaborator also worked together in stage shows, and I actually was able to see one of those, which came to Austin, Texas a few years ago. And they do a very funny and entertaining show. And I got a chance actually to meet them both with backstage, which was a very interesting thing. They're nice people, and they were willing to meet people all the way into 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, which says something about that. At any rate, Jinx is interesting to watch. She makes one of the more difficult to fight villains, because she's basically taken all the music away from the world, and that's the job that the Doctor and Ruby have to do, is to try to bring it back or defeat her in some way, and that's difficult, of course, and she is very formidable. And interestingly, the way that they work this with the musical notes and staff floating through the air and can tie around people's ankles and things like this is the stuff of cartoons. And it is very cartoonish in a great deal of it. So that is something that also reminded me of some of the stuff we saw during the British invasion. It was zany, it was wild, it was almost Marx Brothers type in seeming to leave the realm of reality. And that's okay, because we're talking about time travelers, aren't we? So with this, there is danger, there is suspense, but at the same time, just a lot of entertainment here. And we can give a lot of credit to Jinx Monsoon, who has done a great job of being the villain here. And while she was defeated, we're not absolutely certain that we won't see her again. And I imagine that she'll become one of the more popular villains from time to time. So that was what it was mostly about in The Devil's Chord, and we very much enjoyed that. Ncuti Gatwa, of course, is just a great doctor. Ruby works very well in showing her talents as well, and of course they introduced the Beatles in this episode. And while they don't really look like the Beatles, they're just enough. I mean, my wife pointed out that Paul McCartney had blue eyes in this, and I think that they really weren't trying to get lookalikes. You can't do anything that is not exactly the Beatles that's going to fool anybody, so you might as well just put some actors there and hang a name tag around them and leave it at that. But, they had the haircuts, they had John Lennon and the glasses, although in the time period they were in, that was before he started wearing them, and that sort of thing. They couldn't use any Beatles songs because of complicated copyright things, but it was still, they were made a part of the plot and a part of the solution, and it was all a very enjoyable program, and actually both shows watched together made a very entertaining evening. So I want to know what you think about it. I am very glad to see Doctor Who back, and I don't know that I've been so entertained in many a day as these two were going. There's some people that said that if they were going to do songs, they might as well do a whole musical. I disagree with that. I think that they had a nice mix of things, and showing that they don't have to be locked in one box is something that really appeals to me. So please let me know what you think about this. Put it in the comments below, and subscribe if you will. We would love to have you subscribe to us. We're going to be covering all of the Doctor Who episodes. There are 6 of them left, I believe, this season. So we're looking forward to those, and we'll be covering them on subsequent Mondays. Tuesday, we do a retro review on Babylon 5. On Wednesdays, we do a retro review on Deep Space Nine. On Fridays, we do a review of Star Trek Discovery, and there are a few episodes left in that. So that's what we're doing right now. We hope you join us for one or more of those. Until then, don't go far.